I spend most of my time in risk management studying policy, reading consent orders, really understanding the processes that we're monitoring. And here's how it pays off. I'm Justin Hitt from Inside Strategic Relations. As a subject matter expert, you need to focus in on the key elements that move forward the outcomes you desire. So in risk management, I worry a lot about how controls are developed, if processes are eliminating risk or creating risk, how to simplify activities so that they have fewer steps, which is a way of reducing risk as well. And in this particular newsletter, we do talk about process and the importance of having a way of doing things so that you can get consistent results and so that you can scale. I spend 80% of my time reading boring policies, reading boring laws, rules, and regulations, investigating the process and the activities people do, looking at their status reports and the results of different types of issues that are raised, mapping prioritization, the basics. The basics, and it pays off. It pays off because you start seeing relationships between activities, you start seeing potential challenges, and then you can raise the flag and address the problems accordingly. Now, if you're stuck in a lot of administrative work that doesn't add value to the objectives of your role, you got to do something about it. And here's what I'm getting at. First off, you need objectives for your role. That's important. And you also need to have a process for what you do day to day. So you need to know what is the important deliverables that must be done every day. You need to know what the important activities are that are beneficial to the outcomes that you're looking for. You need to know what areas of education are important that will influence your ability to make quality decisions. And when people get into strategic relationships, they really want like that one trick, that one mind control technique that gets everyone to do exactly what you ask them to do. Well, there isn't such a technique. There will never be such a technique. In fact, the world is significantly complex, and without a broad understanding of what really is going on, you'll fall into the trap of the easy pass. Now, I see this all the time, and if you work in a corporate environment, you definitely see this. If you're a consultant, you likely see this. But organizations will go through cycles. They'll do something that works well, and then it'll get boring, and then they'll want to do something else. Because creativity is much more fun than execution. In fact, execution can get quite boring, and people want to automate it. Hey, we've done this 50,000 times. Why can't we get a computer to do it for us? Well, if you haven't researched the process and you don't understand the risks associated with the process, then you're not going to know that there are actual critical human experiences that inform accurate decisions. You may not be aware that there's elements of skill, not something you could put in a procedural, but actual experience and skill that informs accurate and beneficial decisions. And so it does take that meditation. It does take that consumption of information. Now, the good quality information, not just any information. It takes you drilling down into critical paths and understanding what action influences outcome. Another challenge of this kind of work is extremely cognitive. It does require a lot of brain cycles. It can wear you out. It can make you tired. Imagine if you were working in Congress and you had to read a 5,000-page bill that's being put up. Now, not reading the bill could mean that laws are created that people don't really understand. Reading the bill might mean that you understand the bill, but you have to convey that to a decision maker who can then vote or oppose or write a counter bill. There's a lot of factors in there, and that's how things get hidden because we know that human behavior is not to sit down and read 5,000 pages. Now, how would you read 5,000 pages if that's necessary? Well, you would break the materials up into chapters, and you'd have several people involved, and you'd build mind maps and diagrams in order to identify key concepts. You might search through the document rather than reading through the document to look for keywords and triggers or areas of concern. You might go through and have several readers or artificial intelligence read through to find clustered ideas. But there's a way of doing it. But because this is highly cognitive work, because it requires focused attention, you need to make sure your environment supports it, meaning sometimes you got to turn off the notifications and you've got to close the door and you've just got to grind through those materials, outlining key ideas and concepts. mapping core functions or activities, looking for the fatal flaw, looking for what points are good about what's being presented. And then, of course, documenting all that in a working paper of some kind. But you also need, and this is very important, to periodically take a break. Because as your brain goes through these activities, you're going to have a certain amount of atrophy and where you're just starting to glaze over. It's like reading a good book for enjoyment versus reading the book because you got to do a book report on it. And it's the difference between enjoying the topic, because you do have to have a little bit of fascination in there so that you can drill down and enjoy the topic enough to stay focused. And you can create a list of objectives. You can write a list of questions you're going to answer, but you got to be able to focus on those materials. Now, some personalities can do this better than others, but the key of what I'm pointing out here is that most of high-paid jobs are not just grinding out a process map. It's not just doing 50 steps, and it's definitely not winging it. But it is finding the balance, the critical path, the focused objectives where you can move from milestone to milestone to go from where you are to the goals and objectives that you have. And so the inputs are important. Focusing the education, risk management tends to have a lot of need for current affairs and trending. Same thing with folks doing business analyst work. You may be in the IT sector, and you need to be aware of what patches and problems are showing up in computer systems. You might be in government services, where you need to know about political climate or geopolitical changes across the globe. Whatever it is, understand that when you have the framework for the process, that you just execute that process. Don't try to be creative. Follow an international standard. Document it in such a way that some other person can understand what's going on. And then you get into your specialty area. If there's a lot of administrative overhead associated to what you're doing, get the staff necessary to help with that. Because that level of intelligence in your subject matter expertise is very difficult to find. And if you're wasting it doing a bunch of stuff that doesn't add to the outcome, then the company is less efficient, then your activities are less likely to produce, and then you'll often find yourself grinding through. Like I said, the businesses have these cycles. They're going to have this cycle where everything's going nice and smooth, and everybody kind of has an idea of what they need to be doing, and then you get a reorganization. You get new people in the organization, and they put their spin on things. They haven't actually been there long enough to know how what you were doing was actually working, or to listen to the improvements that you've developed through action, but they change it. And then again, you start repeating the problems that you've had in the past and solved for, and you're kind of starting all over again. That's not optimal. What is optimal is that you have a simple, easy, and effective process that everybody can easily understand. So it should be documented. It should clearly outline the risks, should clearly outline controls to prevent risk or to detect risk. It should often be digestible in common language. And then you have the implementation where your value add, the skill that cannot be replaced, is your ability to interpret and to read and to understand the deep concepts of the activity. Because there is always that fear that you're going to get it so automated that someone else will take care of it, or you're doing a really good job and it looks easy and the big boss says, well, we don't need to be doing that. That's easy. Well, no, it's easy because you have talent and you have skills. It's not easy because it's easy. Anyway, I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations, and this has been about that cross-functional and holistic approach to creating superior results, to creating the outcomes that you desire, to make your work flow, and also to understand that there is a need for turning it off. You don't want to get overwhelmed by it to the point that you start having blind spots. Again, if you have questions about anything we cover in this or any other program, you can visit me at www.insidestrategicrelations.com. I'm Justin Hitt, here to help you transform business relationships into profits. I'm looking forward to hearing from you soon.